My daughter left me a note in the kitchen. I'm sick of you, you useless old man. I'm taking everything away from you. And by the way, this house is sold. Enjoy living in the trash. She was waiting for me to fail, but I wrote back, thanks for letting me know, but I already know that. What I did next made her cry bitter tears, shattering her dreams of an easy inheritance. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The Tampa afternoon pressed humid and heavy through my truck windows as I navigated home from the cardiologist's office. Dr. Ramirez's words still echoed in my skull. Arrhythmia, weakened left ventricle, medications adjusted again. At 63, my body had become a house with failing infrastructure. And I'd spent 3 decades as a fire inspector, knowing exactly what happened to structures when their foundations cracked. I turned onto my street in Seminole Heights, where bungalows from the 1920s sat beneath massive oaks that made the February heat almost bearable. My house appeared at the end of the block, pale yellow with white trim, the place I'd bought 35 years ago when Mildred was 3 and my wife Sarah was still alive. Now Sarah was gone 12 years, and that house held everything I had left, memories in every floorboard, my daughter's childhood etched into door frames with penciled height marks. Mitchell's black Lexus sat in my driveway. Again. I pulled up behind it, my jaw tightening. That car had been appearing more frequently over the past month. My daughter's boyfriend, a slick-talking pharmaceutical sales rep, who wore too much cologne and called me Pops, despite my never inviting that familiarity. The man was 42, 4 years older than Mildred, divorced twice, and perpetually interested in details about my financial situation. Inside, I heard voices from the kitchen. The front door swung open easily. Mildred had my spare key, came and went as she pleased. I found them at the kitchen table, renovation magazines spread like blueprints between coffee cups. Mildred looked up, her smile freezing halfway. Dad, you're back. How was the appointment? The usual, heart still ticking. Doctor says I need rest. Mitchell stood, extending his hand with that practiced salesman grip. Good to hear, Mr. Dixon. We were just looking at some ideas for updating the kitchen. I glanced at the glossy pages showing granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. My counters were Formica from 1987, but they worked fine. Looks nice, I'll leave you to it. Long day. Their relief was palpable. Papers shuffled, voices dropped to murmurs as I climbed the stairs. From the landing, I caught Mitchell's hand resting too close to Mildred's on the table, their heads bowed together like conspirators. Something cold settled in my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. I slept fitfully. Around 2 a.m, chest discomfort and thirst drove me from bed. I moved quietly down the hallway in darkness, my bare feet silent on hardwood floors, worn smooth by decades of walking. Through the kitchen window, I could see the back porch light on, shadows moving. The door stood slightly ajar, voices drifted through. I froze in the darkened hallway, my hand finding the doorframe. He won't last much longer. The doctor said his heart's barely holding on. Mildred's voice. My daughter, cold as January rain. Mitchell's response came casual, calculating. So, we're talking what? 6 months? A year? Does it matter? Once he's gone, we sell this place and finally start living. This house is worth over $400,000. And his pension account? Mildred laughed, a sound I'd never heard before, brittle as breaking glass. That too. Everything. I stood there, my knuckles white against painted wood, my heart pounding hard enough that I wondered if this was it. If betrayal would finish what genetics had started. The metallic taste of shock filled my mouth. My daughter, my only child, the girl I'd taught to ride a bicycle, whose college I'd paid for, whose first apartment deposit I'd covered, was discussing my death like a real estate transaction. I backed away silently, returned to my bedroom, closed the door with care, sat on the edge of the bed in complete darkness. The shock passed quickly, replaced by something colder and more useful. 30 years as a fire inspector had taught me to read patterns, trace evidence back to ignition points. I'd spent 3 decades studying how fires started, how they spread, how accelerants change burn patterns. This was a fire, slow burning, hidden, but unmistakable once you knew to look for it. I thought about the signs I'd ignored, Mildred's questions about my will, her sudden interest in my health, Mitchell's appearance in our lives coinciding with her inquiries about inheritance. The renovation magazines weren't about improving my kitchen. They were about staging their future. Confrontation would be useless. Accusations would only make them more careful. But I knew how to fight fires. You cut off their oxygen, remove their fuel, contain the spread. Then you watch them die. The most dangerous fires are the ones that burn slow and silent. Morning arrived with pale light through my curtains. I rose, showered, dressed. Made coffee in my percolator, the one Sarah had bought at a yard sale in 1989. Buttered toast, read yesterday's newspaper. When Mildred came downstairs at 7:30, I greeted her with a smile. "Coffee's fresh. Sleep well?" She studied me, searching my face for signs I knew something. "Fine. You?" Like a baby, thinking I might sort through some old paperwork today. "Get organized." Her response came too quickly. "Why? Everything's fine, isn't it?" I smiled over my coffee cup. "Of course, just spring cleaning." Mitchell arrived at 8 for breakfast, though nobody had invited him. I greeted him cordially, even offered coffee. We sat at that same table where yesterday they had pretended to discuss kitchen renovations. They relaxed gradually, convinced I suspected nothing. After breakfast, I watched from my kitchen window as they stood in the driveway, heads together, Mitchell's hand on Mildred's lower back. They looked like people planning a vacation, excited about future possibilities. They had no idea those possibilities were already burning away. I turned from the window, rinsed my coffee cup, set it in the drainer. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. They thought they were waiting for me to die. They had no idea I was already planning their funeral. The next 2 weeks, I became invisible in my own house. I watched. I documented. I learned things about my daughter I'd never wanted to know. Mitchell visited 5 times in the first week alone. I started keeping a notepad in my bedroom nightstand, recording dates and times in the methodical script I'd used for 3 decades of inspection reports. February 27th, 3:00 p.m. February 28th, 11 a.m. March 1st, 7 p.m. The pattern was clear. They'd grown comfortable, careless even, assuming my ignorance was permanent. On March 3rd, I woke to use the bathroom around midnight and saw light seeping beneath my study door. I approached silently, years of checking buildings for safety making stealth second nature. Through the gap beneath the door, I watched a phone flashlight beam sweep across file cabinets. Mildred was searching my study. She moved with purpose, trying drawer handles, examining locked cabinets. The beam lingered on my filing system, decades of documents organized by year and category. She tried the locked drawer where I kept my will, wiggling the handle with frustration, evident in the quick, sharp movements. After 5 minutes, she gave up. The light disappeared, and I heard her soft footsteps retreat toward the guest room, where she'd been staying over to help. I returned to bed and stared at the ceiling until dawn. The violation felt sharp and immediate, worse somehow than the overheard conversation. That had been words, plans, hypotheticals. This was action, her hands on my belongings, searching for the documentation of my death. The next morning over breakfast, she was all sweetness. "Dad, you must have so much paperwork. Want me to help organize your financial files?" I looked up from my scrambled eggs. "That's sweet, honey, but I've got a system. You know how I am about my files." "But if something happened, I wouldn't know where anything is." "Nothing's going to happen. I'm tougher than I look." Her smile was thin. Mitchell arrived 20 minutes later with bagels nobody had requested. They were spending nearly every day here now, circling like vultures who'd caught the scent of something dying. That afternoon, while they thought I was napping, I drove downtown to an attorney's office. The law firm of Warren and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of an old brick building on Franklin Street. I'd found Victor Warren through careful research. A state law specialist, reputation for discretion, no connection to Mildred or her social circles. Warren was 50-something, silver-haired, with reading glasses that gave him a scholarly appearance. His office smelled like leather and old books. "Mr. Dixon, you mentioned wanting to discuss estate planning." I settled into the chair across from his desk. "My daughter is planning to inherit my house. I'd like to ensure she doesn't." His eyebrows rose slightly. "That's unusual. May I ask why?" "She's counting on me dying soon. I'd prefer to disappoint her." Warren leaned back, his fingers steepled. "An irrevocable trust would accomplish that. You'd transfer the house into the trust with specific beneficiaries. Once established, you can't undo it. You understand that? Perfect. We spent the next hour reviewing documents, the deed to my house, bank statements, my existing will. Warren explained the process would take 3 to 4 weeks to properly structure the trust, file paperwork, and transfer ownership. The house would go to the Seminole Heights Historical Preservation Society, an organization Sarah had volunteered with before she died. Your daughter will receive nothing, Warren confirmed. Not one single shingle. On the drive home, satisfaction settled warm in my chest. The trust wouldn't just block Mildred's inheritance, it would gut her plans completely. She and Mitchell were building castles on sand that was already washing away. But when I pulled into my driveway, Mitchell's Lexus was there again, and both of them were watching from the front window. I'd been gone 3 hours, too long for a simple errand. Inside, Mitchell stood in my living room like he owned it. Your truck was gone for 3 hours. I set my keys on the hall table. Traffic, and I stopped at the hardware store. Needed light bulbs. Mildred's voice came sharp from the kitchen doorway. Which hardware store? I turned, keeping my expression mild. The one on Dale Mabry. Why? They exchanged glances. Mitchell's jaw worked like he wanted to say more, but couldn't figure out how to justify his interrogation. Mildred forced a smile. Just curious. We worried when you were gone so long. No need to worry. I'm not dead yet. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Mildred's mask slipped. I saw something cold flash in her eyes, something that confirmed everything I'd overheard on that back porch. The next week crawled by. Warren called twice with questions about beneficiaries and documentation. I took both calls from my truck, parked at the public library where nobody could overhear. The trust was progressing, but slowly. Legal documents required precision, filing required time. Meanwhile, at home, the pressure intensified. Mitchell started tracking my movements more openly, his questions becoming bolder. Where did you go this morning? What were you doing in your study for so long? Why are you reorganizing your file cabinets? Each question carried a threat wrapped in false concern. Mildred tried a different approach. One evening, she sat beside me on the couch, her hand on my arm, playing the role of concerned daughter with practiced sincerity. Dad, I've been thinking, maybe we should put my name on your accounts, just in case something happens. I kept my eyes on the television. That's thoughtful, but I've got everything organized. Don't worry about me. But what if you have another heart episode? I'd need access to pay your bills. I've got automatic payments set up. Been doing this a long time, sweetheart. Her hand tightened on my arm briefly before she pulled away. When I glanced at her face, irritation flickered there like sparks from a struck match. She was losing patience, and that made her dangerous. That night, I lay awake, thinking about fire behavior, how accelerants change burn patterns, how you could read a scene and know when someone was preparing to torch a place. They were gathering materials, testing accelerants, waiting for the right moment. I stood at my bedroom window, looking down at the street where Mitchell's car sat parked beneath the oak trees. 3 weeks until Warren finished the paperwork. 3 weeks to maintain this performance, to keep them convinced I suspected nothing. The hardest fires to fight are the ones that haven't started yet, when all you have is evidence of intent. But intent was enough. I'd documented it, photographed it, recorded it. Now I just had to survive long enough to watch it all burn down. They were gathering kindling. They just didn't know I'd already cut the fuel line. 3 weeks had passed since my first visit to Warren's office. 3 weeks of performing normalcy, while my house became a pressure cooker with Mildred and Mitchell circling closer, their patience fraying like old electrical wiring ready to spark. Now, I sat in Warren's office again, watching him arrange the final trust documents across his mahogany desk in neat stacks. A notary public waited in the corner, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a beaded chain. The morning light through his office windows felt ceremonial, though Warren conducted this like any other business transaction. The Morton-Dixon Family Living Trust, established April 12, 2025. Warren's finger traced the title page. Let me walk you through the critical terms before we execute. I leaned forward, my hands steady on my knees, despite the arrhythmia that had woken me at 3 that morning. This was control, not fear. Warren continued, flipping pages. You remain sole beneficiary during your lifetime. You cannot be removed or altered from this position. Upon your death, the property transfers directly to... He glanced at the beneficiary designation. Ethel Warren Dixon. Your sister. Correct. The trust is irrevocable. It cannot be changed, dissolved, or challenged by heirs. Your daughter Mildred has zero claim to this property, now or in the future. He looked up, his expression serious. Once you sign this, it's permanent. That's exactly what I want. We moved through the formalities with precision, my signature on multiple pages, each one witnessed, the notary's stamp making its official mark, Warren's counter-signature as trustee. I wrote a check for $2,800, the final cost of ensuring Mildred's plans burned to ash before they could consume anything I'd built. Warren placed the originals in a burgundy folder. These go in my office safe immediately. Copies for your safety deposit box, effective upon recording with Hillsborough County, which happens tomorrow morning. He paused. Your daughter cannot know about this until you choose to reveal it. Any hints could prompt legal challenges during the recording period. I stood, accepting my copies. She'll find out when it matters most. Walking out to my truck, I felt the weight of that folder under my arm, like a weapon I'd just loaded. The spring heat hit me hard after the air-conditioned office, but I didn't mind. Everything had changed in that signing. The house Mildred was already spending in her mind belonged to someone else now. Had belonged to someone else the moment I signed my name. That evening, I sat alone in my study. Mildred was out with Mitchell, another dinner they didn't invite me to. Didn't think I noticed or cared about. Good. I needed privacy for what came next. I'd been reviewing my bank statements monthly for 3 decades. Habit from fire inspection work, where details mattered, where one overlooked invoice could hide an entire pattern of fraud. Tonight, I spread March and April statements across my desk, running my finger down transaction columns with the same attention I'd once given to electrical panel inspection reports. A withdrawal caught my eye. $200, March 18th. I didn't remember making it. Checked my own records, my meticulous calendar, where I noted every ATM visit, every check written, nothing. I kept reading. $350 on March 27th, $225 on April 3rd, another $180 on April 9th. Small amounts, irregular intervals, never above $400. The threshold where my bank sent automatic alerts, someone with account access, someone who understood banking patterns, someone who knew when I'd be out of the house long enough not to notice. I pulled my calendar closer, cross-referencing dates. March 18th, cardiologist appointment, 2 hours. March 27th, hardware store and lunch, 3 hours. April 3rd, Warren's first consultation, gone all afternoon. April 9th, physical therapy for my shoulder, 90 minutes. Every theft occurred when I was occupied elsewhere. 6 months ago, Mildred had helped me organize my banking documents, said she wanted to make sure everything was current, that I wasn't missing statements. I'd thought it was filial concern. Now I understood. She'd noted my account numbers, possibly photographed documents, maybe even reset security questions when I wasn't looking. The total came to $955. Not enough to hurt me significantly. Enough to show intent, pattern, practice. She wasn't just planning to wait for me to die. She was already stealing. I closed the statements, stacked them neatly. Changed nothing about my expression when Mildred came home an hour later, her perfume preceding her down the hallway. Didn't mention the discrepancies, didn't confront. Evidence required documentation, not confrontation. Fire investigators never rushed to judgment. We collected, measured, photographed, built cases that couldn't be disputed. Let her dig deeper. Every theft was another shovel of dirt in her own grave. The next morning, I drove to the SunTrust branch on Henderson Boulevard. Not my usual branch, somewhere Mildred wouldn't expect me. The account manager, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, reviewed the transactions I'd highlighted. These withdrawals weren't authorized by you. No, made through online banking using correct credentials, I assume. He checked his screen. Yes, username and password both accurate. I need new passwords, 2-factor authentication, and transaction alerts for anything over $50. I kept my tone level, factual. But don't block the account yet. His brow furrowed. Mr. Dixon, if someone has unauthorized access, you should file a fraud report immediately. I want to monitor the situation first, make the security changes, but keep the account active. I'll handle this personally. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but customer choice prevailed over policy. He processed the security updates while I waited, then handed me a temporary password on a sealed envelope. You'll need to set a permanent one from your home computer. Perfect. Walking out, I felt the trap close another degree. With new security, Mildred's next theft attempt would fail. She wouldn't know why immediately, just that access suddenly stopped working. And every failed attempt would be logged, time-stamped, documented by the bank's system. Another trap set. Another thread in the web I was weaving around her. Late April arrived with a humidity that made my chest tight. The month wound down slowly, each day measured by medication doses and Mildred's increasingly frequent visits. She'd moved into the guest room permanently now, claimed she was keeping an eye on me after my cardiologist mentioned my ejection fraction had dropped. One afternoon, supposedly napping in my bedroom, I heard her voice from downstairs, sharp, excited, on the phone. I moved quietly to the top of the stairs. By end of summer at the latest, the market's good right now. Pause. 420, maybe 450 if we're lucky. This neighborhood's hot. My hand found the railing. That's enough for both of us to start over. Maybe Arizona, like you said. Another pause. Her voice dropped, but I caught every word in the quiet house. He's not getting better. Doctor practically said so last visit. 6 months, maybe a year. A bitter laugh. I've waited long enough. 4 years living in this house, taking care of him. I've earned this. My chest tightened. Actual heart pain this time, not just fury. I forced myself to breathe steadily, quietly, focusing on each inhale while my daughter discussed selling property she didn't own, planning a life funded by my death. Just need to be patient a little longer, then we're free. The call ended. I heard her moving around, humming, actually humming. I returned to my bedroom, sat on the bed's edge. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing closer. She wasn't hoping I'd die. She was counting days, planning her future while I still breathed. But she had no idea. The house wasn't hers, had never been hers, would never be hers. I needed to move faster. The trust was secure, but if something happened to me before I exposed the thefts, she'd walk away clean. No consequences, no justice. That evening, she prepared dinner with unusual cheerfulness, humming that same tune from her phone call. I watched from the kitchen doorway, seeing a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Oh, Dad, you're up. Feeling better?" Well enough. Dinner was stilted. She made forced small talk, asked about my day like she cared. I responded minimally, watching her performance. She could barely mask her impatience with my continued existence. Every bite I took, every breath I drew, delayed her plans. After dinner, I returned to my study, opened my computer, entered the new password, created a document titled Evidence Log in a password-protected folder. I began typing, dates, times, overheard conversations, verbatim where possible, the bank thefts, each amount and transaction number, today's phone call about selling the house by summer. I'd spent 30 years investigating how fires start. Now I was documenting one in progress, and soon I'd make sure it consumed only the people who lit it. The chest pain came at 3 a.m, waking me from shallow sleep. Not the usual discomfort. This was pressure, a fist squeezing my ribs from inside. I sat up slowly, reaching for the nitroglycerin tablets on my nightstand. Dissolved one under my tongue, tasted the familiar chemical burn. 5 minutes. The pressure eased slightly, but didn't disappear. I took another tablet, knowing I was supposed to call emergency services if 2 didn't work. But I didn't call. Not yet. Too much unfinished. By morning, the episode had passed, leaving me exhausted but functional. I scheduled an emergency cardiology appointment, drove myself to Tampa General, told the receptionist I'd had chest pain overnight. Dr. Patricia Chen saw me within the hour, her expression tightening as she reviewed my EKG results. Your ejection fraction has dropped to 30%. Your heart's pumping at less than half normal capacity. She pulled her stool closer, her voice clinical but not unkind. Mr. Dixon, you're in congestive heart failure, advanced stage. I nodded, unsurprised. We need to discuss realistic timelines. With medication compliance and lifestyle modifications, maybe a year. Without them, considerably less. She paused. Do you have affairs in order? Family support? Affairs are in order, family's complicated. She asked questions I deflected, wrote new prescriptions, scheduled a follow-up for 2 weeks. Walking out, I felt the weight of that timeline, a year, maybe less. Enough time to finish what I'd started, barely. That evening, back in my study, I reviewed bank statements again. The security changes had taken effect 3 days ago. I logged into my account, checked the security event log the manager had shown me how to access. 7 failed login attempts. April 29th, April 30th, May 1st. Then silence. Mildred had tried repeatedly, then stopped when she realized something had changed. But the earlier thefts totaled more than I'd initially calculated. I'd found additional transactions going back further. November, December, January. Small amounts I'd dismissed as my own forgetfulness. Together, they totaled $3,400. $3,400 stolen, while she smiled at me across the dinner table. I documented every transaction in my evidence log. Downloaded bank statements as PDFs, saved them in triplicate, computer, external drive, cloud storage. Built a case file the way I'd once built fire investigation reports. Comprehensive, undeniable, structured for legal review. The following morning, I drove to a different bank, Chase, across town. Opened a new account Mildred couldn't access. Transferred 70% of my funds there. Left enough in the old account to appear normal, but not enough to matter. Created a paper trail showing the transfer, the reason noted simply as security measure. Then I drove to the AT&T store on Dale Mabry Highway. A young technician, probably 25, showed me call recording apps. I explained I needed to document important conversations for legal purposes. You're in Florida, right? One-party consent state. He tapped his tablet screen. Means you can record any conversation you're part of without telling the other person. Try Tape a Call Pro. $10 a month, records everything automatically. I paid for 6 months up front. Installed the app while the technician watched, made sure I understood how it worked. Every incoming and outgoing call would now record and save to cloud storage. Driving home, I felt the web tightening, trust documents secured, bank accounts protected and documented, recording capability active, every piece in place. Over the following 2 weeks, the confrontations escalated. I'd been weak enough for Mildred to drop her mask entirely. At dinner one night, Mitchell present as always now, she barely picked at her food before speaking. Most people have the decency to not overstay their welcome. I set down my fork carefully. This is my house, Mildred. For now, everything has an expiration date. My phone sat in my shirt pocket, tape a call running silently. Every word preserved. The next incident came in the kitchen. I'd walked in on Mildred and Mitchell discussing renovation plans. Again, but bolder now, with paint swatches spread across my counter. Mildred barely looked up. I don't know how much longer I can stand this. Living like a prisoner in my own house. Mitchell started to respond, caught himself. Your house? I thought, it will be, soon enough. I retreated silently, my phone recording everything. The worst confrontation came over mail. I'd been organizing correspondence in my study when Mildred walked in, picked up an envelope from my desk without asking. That's my mail. She barely glanced at me. Someone has to manage things around here. I manage my own affairs. Maybe you should just let go, make things easier for everyone. The word everyone hung there, ugly in its honesty. Everyone except me, everyone who'd benefit from my absence, every conversation recorded, every casual cruelty captured in digital format, time-stamped, stored where she couldn't delete it. Late May arrived. I'd lost 12 pounds in 6 weeks, my clothes hanging loose. My reflection showed someone gaunt, older than 63, skin gray beneath brown. Dr. Chen had adjusted medications again, but they fought a losing battle. One evening, I sat on the back porch, the same spot where I'd overheard that first conversation in February. 3 months had passed. In that time, I'd secured my house in a trust, documented theft, recorded dozens of cruel statements, built a case file that would destroy whatever sympathy Mildred might claim after my death. But my body was failing faster than I'd anticipated. The pain came more frequently now. Nitroglycerin tablets consumed daily instead of weekly. Sleep became impossible without sitting upright, my lungs struggling against fluid accumulation. Inside, I heard Mildred on another phone call, her voice carried through the screen door. Just a matter of waiting now. He looks terrible, can barely make it up the stairs. I reached for my nitroglycerin bottle, hands trembling slightly, placed a tablet under my tongue. I've already contacted a real estate agent. Just preliminary discussions, to get valuations ready. The evening air felt heavy, oppressive. Lightning bugs emerged as darkness gathered, their lights pulsing like failing electrical connections. Everything's in place, just need nature to take its course. I closed my eyes, focused on breathing. The tablet dissolved slowly. My heart rate steadied marginally. She had no idea nature had already taken its course, that the house she discussed so casually belonged to Ethel now, my sister 2 states away, who'd raised 3 good children and never once suggested I was taking too long to die. Inside, Mildred's call ended. I heard her footsteps approaching, then stopping. She'd seen me through the screen door, but didn't come out, didn't offer help, just stood there briefly, then walked away. The moment was coming. I could feel it in my failing body, in her escalating boldness, in Mitchell's near constant presence. Something would break soon, my heart, her patience, the thin veneer of civility we maintained. I just needed to survive long enough to see her face when she learned the truth, when she discovered every plan, every theft, every cruel word had been for nothing. The nitroglycerin finally eased the pressure in my chest. I remained on the porch as darkness completed its arrival, listening to my daughter move through a house she believed was hers, planning a future built on my death. Let her plan, let her scheme, let her count her money and measure her freedom. I'd already made sure she'd receive exactly what she'd earned, nothing. 3 nights after the back porch episode, I sat in my study reviewing evidence files. The computer screen cast pale light across documentation I'd spent months assembling. Bank statements, recordings, photographs. My chest ached, but I'd learned to work through the discomfort. Nitroglycerin tablets within reach, always. Then the pain arrived like a freight train, not the usual pressure. This was crushing, absolute, a vice compressing my ribcage from inside. Both arms went numb. I tried to stand, collapsed back into my chair. Cold sweat soaked through my shirt in seconds. My vision narrowed, sounds muffled like I'd been submerged underwater. This was it. The big one doctors warned about. I grabbed for my phone, but my hands shook violently, fingers unable to grip. Tried to call out, "Help!" but my voice came as barely a whisper. The study door seemed impossibly far away. Footsteps in the hallway. Mildred's voice calling something I couldn't process. She appeared in the doorway, froze, saw me slumped in the chair, face gray, gasping like a landed fish. Our eyes met. For one terrible, crystalline moment, I watched her calculate, saw the decision forming behind her expression. Help or let nature take its course. This was her chance. Everything she'd planned, everything she'd stolen, resolved right now if she just walked away. Then her mask snapped on. "Dad, oh my, I'm calling 911. She pulled out her phone, started speaking rapidly to the dispatcher. But I understood. She called them because she needed it to look natural. Needed witnesses to her concern, her horror, her grief. My last conscious thought before darkness claimed me. She's already planning my funeral. I woke 3 days later in Tampa General's ICU. Tubes everywhere, down my throat, in my arms, monitoring machines beeping rhythms I felt rather than heard. Disoriented, struggling to understand where I was, what happened. A nurse appeared, checked monitors. "Mr. Dixon, welcome back. You gave us quite a scare." "What?" My voice sounded wrong, rough from intubation. "Massive myocardial infarction, emergency surgery. They placed 2 stents. She adjusted something on my IV. Doctor will be in shortly." Dr. Chen arrived an hour later, her expression serious but not grim. "Mr. Dixon, you're lucky to be alive. It was close." "How close?" "Your heart stopped twice in the ambulance. The paramedics brought you back both times." "Twice. I died twice. Literally flatlined, ceased existing, then been forced back into this failing body. The next 9 days blurred together. Physical weakness so extreme that lifting my arm exhausted me. Walking to the bathroom required assistance. But my mind stayed sharp. I used that time to think, to plan, to understand exactly what would happen next. Mildred visited 3 times. First visit, day 4. She brought flowers, grocery store carnations, nothing expensive. Sat beside my bed, held my hand with fingers that felt too cold. "Dad, you scared me so much." Her eyes were completely dry. No tears, not even the attempt at crying. After 10 minutes of performance, she shifted. Do you have your documents organized? Important papers, I mean. In case something happens, I need to know where things are. I pretended exhaustion, let my eyes close. She left 15 minutes later, irritation poorly disguised. Second visit, day 8, shorter. She skipped pleasantries entirely. Do you have a will? I need to know where things stand. Everything's in order. But where? What lawyer? In order, I repeated, letting the words slur slightly. She left quickly, frustrated by my vagueness. Third visit, day 11, final visit before discharge. She barely stayed 10 minutes. Doctor says you're going home tomorrow. I'll have things ready for you. I watched her leave, saw her check her phone immediately in the hallway, texting someone, Mitchell probably, making arrangements. Each visit I studied her, the impatience poorly hidden, the questions about paperwork, the absolute lack of genuine concern. She wasn't waiting for my recovery. She was waiting for my death certificate. Discharge came mid-June. I expected Mildred to pick me up. Hospital protocols required someone to drive you home. I waited in the wheelchair at the entrance, nurse hovering, watching cars pull up and depart. 20 minutes passed. I called Mildred's phone. No answer. I'll take a taxi, I told the nurse. She looked uncomfortable, but couldn't argue. Helped me into the yellow cab that arrived 10 minutes later. The driver, a man around 40 with kind eyes, made conversation as we pulled away from the hospital. Hospital stays are rough, huh? You have no idea. 25 minutes through Tampa traffic to Seminole Heights. During the drive, I felt something shift inside me. Not physical, my body was wrecked, exhausted, held together by medication and surgical intervention. But mentally, emotionally, something crystallized. I'd died twice and come back. She didn't get to kill me a third time. The taxi pulled up to my house. Mildred's car sat in the driveway. She'd been home the entire time, hadn't come to get me. I paid the driver, refused help with my small bag, walked slowly to the front door, used my key. Entered silence. No welcome home, no preparation, nothing. Every step through the living room felt deliberate, purposeful. I walked to the kitchen, and there on the table sat a single sheet of paper, handwritten in Mildred's sharp, slanted script. I picked it up, read words that confirmed everything I'd known but hadn't wanted to believe. You're a burden, old man. I'm taking everything from you. By the way, this house is sold. Enjoy your life in the dumpster. My hand trembled, not from weakness, from rage so cold it felt like ice water through my veins. I read it twice, making absolutely certain I wasn't misunderstanding. The cruelty was breathtaking. I'd nearly died, spent 12 days fighting for life, and this awaited me. But beneath rage, something else crystallized. Clarity. This note was evidence, written in her hand. Undeniable proof of intent. I took my phone out, photographed the note from multiple angles, documented the evidence, set it carefully back on the table. Then I walked through my house, checking rooms like a crime scene investigator. My bedroom, untouched but feeling violated somehow, like she'd been through my belongings. My study, papers slightly disturbed, file cabinet lock scratched. She'd tried to break in while I was hospitalized, hadn't succeeded. Spare bedroom, Mitchell's clothes hanging in the closet, shoes lined beneath. He'd moved in completely while I fought for life in intensive care. I returned to the kitchen, stood looking at that note. The paper seemed to pulse with malice. She thought she'd won. Thought I was too weak, too broken to fight back. Thought a man who died twice would just lie down and accept this. She wanted everything. Now she'd lose everything. My chest ached, real heart damage, permanent, but resolve stronger than pain. I didn't need to confront her. I needed to destroy her. I sat at the kitchen table, took out my phone, opened voice memo, recorded a statement. June 15th, approximately 3 p.m. Returned home from hospital after 12-day stay following heart attack. Found note from daughter Mildred Dixon on kitchen table. Note states she's taking everything, house is sold, tells me to enjoy life in the dumpster. Evidence of intent to defraud and deprive me of property. Saved the recording. Then I called my sister Ethel in Orlando. She answered on the second ring. Morton, are you out of the hospital? I need a place to stay for a while. Can I come to you? Concern flooded her voice. Of course. What happened? I'll explain when I get there. Packing now. I hung up before she could ask more questions. Moved methodically through the house, packing one bag. Clothes, medications, laptop, phone charger. Critical items, all evidence files, copies of bank statements, recordings, trust documents I'd kept at home. Left most belongings, didn't matter. I wasn't abandoning anything permanently. Returned to kitchen. Looked at that note one final time. Took a pen from the counter, flipped the note over to its blank side. Paused, considering words carefully. Wrote in steady hand. Thank you for the warning. I know. 4 words that meant everything and nothing. Set the note back on table, deliberately flipped so my response showed face up. Picked up my bag, walked to the front door. One look back at this house. 30 years of memories, now a battleground. Stepped outside, closed the door behind me. She wanted me gone. Careful what you wish for. I drove east on I-4 toward Orlando, watching Tampa disappear in my rearview mirror. 90 miles felt longer than usual, with chest pain radiating through every breath. But I pushed through. Mildred thought I was broken. Dead man walking. She had no idea what was coming. Ethel's house sat in College Park, a quiet neighborhood with old oaks and houses that looked like they had witnessed generations. She met me at the door, her expression shifting from concern to alarm when she saw me. Morton, you look terrible. I feel worse. I let her take my bag, followed her inside. Her living room smelled like the lemon oil she used on furniture, familiar and safe. She guided me to the couch, made me sit while she fetched water and my medications. Are you going to tell me what's happening? Mildred left me a note, said the house is sold, told me to enjoy life in a dumpster. Ethel's hand stopped mid-motion. While you were in the hospital, after you nearly died? The note was waiting on the kitchen table when I got home. She sat beside me, her teacher's instincts taking over, assessing, processing, planning. Ethel had raised 3 good kids after her husband passed, ran a classroom for 30 years. She recognized cruelty when she saw it. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. Fight back. That evening, I slept in her guest room. First real rest in weeks, knowing someone actually cared whether I survived the night. Morning came with clarity. I called Warren from Ethel's back porch, watching cardinals fight over her bird feeder. Mr. Dixon, I heard about your hospitalization. How are you? Alive, barely, but that's not why I'm calling. I explained about the note, about coming home to that message after nearly dying. I want the letter sent today. Certified mail, signature required. Warren paused. The trust notification letter? Yes. Time for Mildred to learn exactly what she's inheriting. This will be quite a shock for her. That's the idea? We discussed timing, delivery methods, exact wording. Warren would draft a formal notification letter explaining the irrevocable trust, that the house now belonged to Ethel, that Mildred had 0 claim, certified mail requiring signature, evidence of delivery. It'll go out this afternoon, Warren confirmed. Should arrive in 2 days. I found out later what happened after I left. Mitchell told me during a deposition, months afterward, thinking cooperation might reduce his culpability, and they'd returned to the house 30 minutes after I departed. Mildred noticed my truck gone immediately, rushed inside calling my name, found the note on the kitchen table, my response on the back. Mitchell said she'd laughed, actually laughed. Listen to this. He wrote, I know. Know what? Pathetic old man? Mitchell had been less certain. What do you think he means? Nothing. He's trying to sound mysterious, probably confused from all the medication. They'd celebrated that night, ordered takeout, drank wine, discussed renovation plans. Mildred already had real estate appointments scheduled, contractors lined up. In her mind, the house was sold, money divided, new life starting. 2 days later, June 18th, the letter arrived. I was at Ethel's, sitting on her porch with morning coffee, when my phone rang. Mildred. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. 6 times in 10 minutes. Then Warren called. Your daughter has the letter. Good. What's your next move? I wait, let her panic. Then we move on the theft charges. At the Tampa house, Mildred stood in the kitchen reading Warren's letter for the 3rd time, Mitchell watching her face drain of color. The letter was formal, devastating in its simplicity. Dear Ms. Dixon, This letter serves as official notification that the property located at 2847 Palmetto Avenue, Tampa, Florida, has been placed in the Morton-Dixon Family Living Trust, established April 12, 2025. This trust is irrevocable and cannot be modified, dissolved, or challenged. Upon Mr. Morton-Dixon's death, the property will transfer directly to Ms. Ethel Warren Dixon of Orlando, Florida. You have no legal claim to this property now or in the future. All documentation has been properly filed with Hillsborough County and is a matter of public record. Sincerely, Victor Warren, Esquire Warren and Associates. Mitchell read over her shoulder. When did he do this? April. Her voice came out strangled. He did this in April, before the heart attack, before... She stopped, realization washing over her features. He knew. That's what the note meant. I know. He knew everything. The bank account, Mitchell said slowly. You said you were accessing his pension. If he changed the security... Mildred's face went white. If he documented the withdrawals... She grabbed her phone, tried calling again. I watched it ring from Ethel's porch, let it go to voicemail, watched her try again. By evening, I had 87 missed calls from Mildred. Voicemails ranged from apologetic to furious to desperate. I deleted them without listening fully. Didn't matter what she said now. Ethel brought me dinner on the porch. She's still calling? Every 10 minutes. Are you going to answer? No. What happens next? I looked at my phone, watching another call come through, watching it ring and ring until voicemail picked up. Warren files police reports tomorrow. Bank fraud, elder abuse, attempted theft. Everything documented, time-stamped, recorded. Will she go to jail? Probably not. First offense, she'll likely get probation, restitution, community service. But she'll have a record, criminal conviction, that follows you forever. And the house? She gets nothing, absolutely nothing. After everything she planned, every cruel word, every dollar stolen, she walks away with nothing. The sun set over Orlando, painting Ethel's yard in orange and gold. My phone rang again. Mildred's name lit the screen. I let it ring. Ethel sat beside me. You've been planning this for months. Since February, since I overheard her discussing my death like a real estate transaction. She's your daughter? She stopped being my daughter when she started counting days until I died. Another call. I declined it this time, watched the notification disappear. The fire I'd been building for months was finally catching, I said quietly. And she was standing right in the middle of it, only now realizing the floor had been burning beneath her feet all along. My phone had been ringing for 20 minutes straight, 47 missed calls now, all from Mildred. I sat on Ethel's porch watching each one, Mildred's name lighting the screen, the ringtone playing through, voicemail picking up, then starting again 30 seconds later. Ethel stood in the doorway, coffee cup in hand. She's persistent. She's panicking. Text messages started flooding in. I could see the previews without opening them. Dad, call me now. We need to talk about this letter. This is ridiculous. Call me back. You can't do this to me. Each message sharper than the last, desperation morphing into anger. I read them with detached interest, feeling nothing. Ethel sat beside me. You're really not going to answer? Not yet. She needs to understand she has no leverage. Every unanswered call, every ignored message, she was realizing she couldn't manipulate me anymore. That for the first time in years, I held all the control and she had none. The phone rang again, 48th call. I silenced it, placed it face down on the table. Let her exhaust herself. Mitchell later told their lawyer what happened next, and it eventually made its way back to Warren. Mildred had been at the Tampa house, that letter still sitting on the kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. She'd called me dozens of times, sent countless messages. Nothing. Mitchell paced behind her. Maybe we should call that lawyer, see if the letter is even real. It's his father's attorney. It's real. Her voice carried an edge of hysteria. But maybe there's a mistake. Maybe... She grabbed car keys. I'm going to his office, now. You want me to come? No, stay here in case Dad comes back. 20-minute drive to Warren's downtown Tampa office. She ran red lights, parked illegally, stormed into the reception area where Warren's secretary sat behind a polished desk. Do you have an appointment? I need to see Victor Warren, now. It's about my father, Morton Dixon. The secretary made a call. Warren agreed to see her. He'd expected this. She was shown into his office. Professional setting, law books lining walls, diplomas arranged precisely. Warren remained seated, calm, utterly professional. "Ms. Dixon, please sit." She didn't. "This letter, about a trust. There must be some mistake." Warren gestured to the chair again. She reluctantly sat, hands gripping the armrests. "There's no mistake. Your father established the Morton-Dixon Family Living Trust on April 15th, 2025. He slid a folder across his desk. Mildred opened it. Official documents, notarized trust agreement, county recording stamps, transfer deeds. Her hands shook as she read the words. Irrevocable. Morton Dixon, sole beneficiary during lifetime. Ethel Warren Dixon, named successor beneficiary. This can't be legal. He was sick. He wasn't thinking clearly. Warren interrupted, voice unchanged. Your father was examined by his physician prior to signing. He was fully competent. In April, he had heart problems. Heart problems don't equal mental incompetence. He understood exactly what he was doing. Mildred stared at the dates. April 15th, weeks before his hospitalization, before she'd left that note, before everything collapsed. Realization hit visibly. He planned this. He knew. Your father is quite thorough. 30 years as a fire inspector teaches attention to detail. There has to be a way to contest this. Medical grounds, undue influence, something. You're welcome to consult your own attorney, but I assure you, this trust was constructed specifically to be unassailable. My Aunt Ethel gets the house. I'm his daughter. The trust reflects your father's wishes. He has every legal right to determine distribution of his property. Mildred stood abruptly. This isn't over. Warren remained calm, almost gentle. Actually, Ms. Dixon, it is. The house is not yours. It will never be yours. She left, sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened, called Mitchell. It's real, all of it. The trust is real. So, what do we do? I'm getting a second opinion. She spent the afternoon consulting another attorney, paid $300 for a consultation. This lawyer reviewed the trust documents Warren had copied for her, delivered the same verdict. This is ironclad. Irrevocable means unchangeable. Your father retains all rights during his lifetime, then the property transfers exactly as specified. What if he was coerced? What if that attorney manipulated him? You'd need proof, and given the documentation here, medical clearance, psychiatric evaluation, proper witnesses, you'd lose. So I get nothing? Not from this property, no. $300 poorer and completely trapped. That evening, alone at the house, Mitchell had gone home, too stressed to stay. Mildred started texting me again. The messages shifted from desperate to threatening. You planned this? You knew what I was doing. This is elder abuse. I'll report you. I took care of you for years, and this is how you repay me? You're a vindictive old man. I hope you're proud. I'll sue you. I'll contest this. You haven't won. Answer your phone, you coward. They kept coming, increasingly unhinged. I sat at Ethel's kitchen table reading each one as it arrived. Ethel looked over my shoulder. She sounds unstable. She sounds exposed. I saved every message. More evidence of her character, her intentions, her true nature stripped of pretense. I didn't respond to any. Let her rage. Let her threaten. Every word she sent made my case stronger. The next morning, I made a decision. I need to go back to Tampa today. Police station. Ethel looked up from her newspaper. Want me to come? No, this I do alone. I drove the 90 miles back to Tampa, used the time to organize my thoughts, review my documentation one final time. Went directly to the Tampa Police Department, District 3 station in Seminole Heights. Asked at the front desk to file a complaint about financial fraud. Was directed to the Economic Crimes Unit. Officer Rodriguez, the intake officer, was maybe 35, thorough in his questions. I presented my prepared evidence across his desk. Bank statements showing $6,200 in unauthorized withdrawals over 3 months. Spreadsheet documenting each transaction. Date, amount, my whereabouts, proving I hadn't made them. Bank's documentation of failed login attempts after I'd changed security. written statement explaining Mildred had gained access to my account information by helping with finances months earlier. Rodriguez reviewed the materials carefully. This is very thorough, Mr. Dixon. I was a fire inspector. Documentation is what I do. You understand this is your daughter? Filing charges could result in criminal prosecution. I understand. She stole from me. There should be consequences. He nodded slowly. We'll need to verify these transactions with your bank. Expect a detective to contact you within a week. I provided contact information, Ethel's Orlando address temporarily. Rodriguez had one more question. Why wait until now to file? These thefts go back to February. I needed to be sure. I needed complete documentation. And I needed to be somewhere she couldn't intimidate me into dropping charges. Understanding crossed his face. We'll be in touch. I drove back to Orlando, arriving early evening. Ethel was preparing dinner. How did it go? Police have everything, now we wait. You really think they'll prosecute? $6,000, unauthorized access, clear pattern of behavior. Yes. We ate quietly. My phone buzzed. Mildred again. I know you filed something. Mitchell saw police activity. You're going to regret this. I showed the text to Ethel. Is that a threat? That's more evidence. I took a screenshot, saved it in my documentation folder. She was unraveling. Every move she made now hurt her case more than mine. The trap I'd been building for months was finally closing, and she'd walked right into the center of it, still not understanding how thoroughly she'd been outmaneuvered. 1 week later, Warren called with news I'd been expecting. Mildred has filed a civil suit. She's claiming you weren't of sound mind when you signed the trust documents in April. I stood on Ethel's porch, watching rain clouds gather over Orlando. What's our defense? Medical documentation. We'll need psychiatric evaluations, multiple doctors examining you, confirming competency. Set it up, whatever it costs. This will be expensive. 3 separate psychiatrists, court fees. I said whatever it costs. The evaluations happened over 10 days. 3 different psychiatrists, 3 separate appointments. I drove to Tampa each time, sat in sterile offices answering the same questions. The first psychiatrist, Dr. Harold Chen, was methodical. Mr. Dixon, can you explain why you established this trust? My daughter was stealing from me, planning to inherit my house, sell it immediately after my death. I wanted to ensure she received nothing. That's quite clear reasoning. Can you walk me through the trust structure? I explained it precisely. Irrevocable trust, myself as sole beneficiary during lifetime, Ethel as successor. The legal terminology I'd learned, the implications I understood completely. Dr. Chen made notes. Your understanding is sophisticated. You clearly comprehended what you were signing. The second evaluation, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, focused on my emotional state. How do you feel about your daughter now? Disappointed, betrayed, but clear-headed about necessary actions. Some might say this response is vindictive. Some might say protecting yourself from theft is survival. She smiled slightly. Indeed. The third psychiatrist, Dr. Robert Warren, no relation to my attorney, asked about my heart condition. Your daughter claims your medical issues affected your judgment. I have congestive heart failure. It affects my physical capacity, not my mental acuity. Can you perform basic calculations for me? I did. Math problems, memory tests, logical reasoning exercises, passed everything easily. 3 weeks after Mildred filed her lawsuit, we stood in Hillsborough County Circuit Court, Judge Patricia Hernandez presiding, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every courtroom manipulation possible. Mildred sat at the plaintiff's table with her attorney, Mark Sullivan, a man in his 40s wearing an expensive suit that screamed desperation. Mitchell sat behind them in the gallery, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Warren and I sat at the defense table. He'd prepared me thoroughly. Answer questions directly, don't elaborate, let the evidence speak. Judge Hernandez reviewed the submitted documents. I've read the petition, reviewed the psychiatric evaluations. All 3 doctors found Mr. Dixon competent to execute a trust. Ms. Dixon, do you have expert testimony contradicting these findings? Sullivan stood. No, Your Honor, but we believe. Then you have no case. Her tone was final. Mr. Dixon created a legal trust while demonstrably competent. His medical condition is irrelevant to his mental capacity. The trust stands as written. Mildred stood suddenly. This is... Ms. Dixon, sit down. The judge's voice cut like a blade. Your petition is denied. This trust is valid and irrevocable. Court costs assessed to the plaintiff. The gavel struck. Mildred remained standing, her face flushed with rage and disbelief, until Sullivan pulled her down. Outside the courthouse, Warren shook my hand. That went as well as we could hope. How much does she owe in court costs? Approximately $4,000. Filing fees, administrative costs, court reporter. I smiled slightly. She spent money trying to steal money she was never going to get. My phone rang. Unknown Tampa number, I answered. Mr. Dixon, this is Detective Florence Russell, Tampa Police Department. I've been assigned to your case regarding unauthorized access to your financial accounts. I moved to a quieter area of the courthouse courtyard. What have you found? Between February and April 2025, your daughter withdrew $6,200 in 47 separate transactions, all unauthorized, all using stolen account credentials. What happens now? This qualifies as grand theft third degree under Florida statute, a felony. I'll be contacting Ms. Dixon within 24 hours to request an interview. Will she be arrested? That depends on the interview and whether the state attorney decides to prosecute. But Mr. Dixon, based on the evidence you provided, prosecution is likely. I thanked her, ended the call. Warren had waited, watching my expression. The detective? She's contacting Mildred tomorrow, wants an interview about the theft. Felony charges? Likely. Warren was quiet for a moment. Your daughter went from expecting to inherit hundreds of thousands to facing criminal prosecution. That's quite a reversal. She earned it. We drove separately back to our respective destinations. I returned to Orlando, where Ethel had dinner waiting. How was court? Lawsuit dismissed. Judge didn't even deliberate, just shut it down immediately. And the police? Detective called during the recess. She's interviewing Mildred tomorrow. The next day, I didn't have to wait long for news. Mildred called me. First time she'd actually gotten through in weeks because I answered this time. The police were here. Her voice shook. A detective asking about your bank account. Detective Russell. You know her name? You did this. You filed charges. I reported theft. What the police do with that information is their decision. She said felony charges. She said I could go to prison. You stole $6,200 from my pension account over 3 months. What did you expect? I'm your daughter. You wrote that I should enjoy life in a dumpster. You planned to sell my house before my body was cold. You wished for my death. My voice stayed level, factual. You stopped being my daughter when you started counting the days until I died. Silence on the line. Then, I'll pay it back, every dollar. Just drop the charges. I didn't file charges. I filed a complaint. The police investigated. They found evidence of felony theft. This isn't in my hands anymore. Please, did you show Detective Russell mercy when you were stealing from me? Did you show mercy when you left that note? I ended the call. Ethel had been listening from the kitchen doorway. That was hard. That was necessary. Over the following week, I learned from Warren, who learned from Sullivan, that Detective Russell had interviewed both Mildred and Mitchell. Mitchell admitted being aware of the withdrawals, making him potentially an accessory. Mildred had hired a criminal defense attorney, burning through savings she'd accumulated partially with my stolen money. The detective called me one final time. Mr. Dixon, the state attorney's office is moving forward with prosecution. Your daughter will be formally charged with grand theft and unauthorized access to a computer system, both felonies. What's the timeline? Arraignment within 30 days. After that, it's up to her attorney, whether they want to fight or negotiate a plea. That night, I sat on Ethel's porch in the darkness, phone silent for the first time in weeks. No calls from Mildred, no threatening texts, just silence. She'd exhausted all her options. The trust was unbreakable. The lawsuit had failed spectacularly. Criminal charges were filed. Every door she'd tried to open had slammed in her face, and I'd been the one systematically closing each one. You look satisfied, Ethel said, bringing me tea. I look vindicated. What happens when she has to face all of this? The charges, the trial? When she does, I said quietly, I'll be watching. 3 days later, my phone rang. Detective Russell. Mr. Dixon, your daughter came in for questioning this morning. Thought you'd want to know. I stood, moved to Ethel's back porch for privacy. How did it go? She denied everything at first, said she never accessed your account. Russell told me what happened in that interrogation room. I could picture it clearly. Stark walls, fluorescent lights, the kind of space designed to strip away pretense. Detective Russell had sat across from Mildred, her attorney Mark Sullivan beside her. She'd slid a printout across the table. These are login records from SunTrust Bank, 47 unauthorized transactions between February and April 2025. Mildred's response came defensive, practiced. I don't know anything about those. Each login was from IP address 198.51.142. That's the internet connection at your father's house, where you've been living. Maybe someone else. Mitchell was there a lot. So you're saying Mitchell Kennedy accessed your father's account? Mildred had grown desperate. He could have. He was always on his phone, using the Wi-Fi. Russell pulled out a second document. Transaction timestamps. Every single withdrawal occurred during daytime hours when Mitchell's phone GPS places him at his apartment or job sites. You, however, were home. Sullivan tried intervening. Detective, unless you have direct evidence, we do. The bank provided device fingerprints. All transactions came from a laptop registered to Mildred Dixon, purchased 2023. Russell told me Mildred's face had drained completely of color. You used credentials your father gave you in January 2024 when you helped him set up online banking. You retained that access without his permission. That's unauthorized access, Ms. Dixon. That's theft. I listened to Russell's account, feeling something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly, more like completion. We also picked up Mitchell Kennedy this morning. For the theft? Initially, yes. But when we ran his information, an outstanding warrant popped up. Orange County, unpaid court-ordered restitution from 2022, $8,500 in civil judgments. He ran? Tried to? Officers found him packing a car at 6 a.m., clearly planning to leave town. He's in custody now. Mitchell had abandoned Mildred the moment pressure arrived. Not surprising. He's trying to cooperate, blaming everything on your daughter. Says she masterminded it, he just went along. I laughed, bitter and brief. Of course he does. Between you and me, Mr. Dixon, they're both culpable. But your daughter made the transactions. She's facing the more serious charges. What happens next? Prosecutor's office will contact her attorney about a plea arrangement. Given the amount and evidence, she'll be offered a deal. And if she refuses? Trial, and she'll lose. 2 weeks of silence followed. I stayed at Ethel's, waiting while the legal machinery ground forward. Then Victor Warren called. Morton, the prosecutor contacted Sullivan. They've offered Mildred a plea deal. Terms: full restitution of $6,200, admission of guilt to third-degree grand theft, 3 years probation with conditions, mandatory financial counseling, no contact with you, random audits of her finances. And if she rejects it, trial. Prosecutor believes it's a strong case. If convicted, she's looking at up to 5 years in state prison. I sat quiet, processing. Her attorney called me. Mildred wants to know if you'd consider dropping charges if she returns the money. No. Immediate. Final. I told Sullivan you'd say that. Mildred accepted the plea this afternoon. Something twisted in my chest. Not satisfaction. Finality. There's a formal sentencing hearing in 2 weeks, August 15th. You can attend if you want. Victims have that right. I'll be there. One more thing. Now that she's pleading guilty, we can pursue the eviction. She has no legal standing to remain in your house. How fast can we move? I'll file papers tomorrow. 30 days notice to vacate as unlawful occupant. Do it. I hung up, sat quietly in Ethel's living room. She looked up from her book. She took the deal. 3 years probation, felony conviction. She'll carry that record forever. Is that enough? I looked at my sister. It has to be. I can't give her more years in prison, but I can give her consequences. The next day, Warren's office prepared the eviction notice. A process server delivered it to the Tampa house. Mildred signed for it, read the words that ended her last claim to anything I'd built. Demand to vacate premises. You are hereby notified that you are unlawfully occupying property located at 2847 Palmetto Avenue, Tampa, Florida. You have no lease, rental agreement, or legal right to occupy said premises. You must vacate within 30 days of this notice, by September 3rd, 2025, or legal action will be taken. Warren called me that evening. Process server said she read it and started crying. I felt no sympathy, just resolution. That same evening, my phone started ringing. Mildred, over and over. First day, 34 missed calls. Text messages flooding in. Dad, please answer. I need to talk to you. Where am I supposed to go? You're really throwing me out? I'm your daughter. I read each one, didn't respond. Second day, 53 more calls, 87 total over 2 days. Voicemails piled up. I didn't listen. Ethel watched me watching the phone ring. She's desperate. She should have thought about that before. Evening of the second day, the phone rang again. Mildred. Call number 87. Ethel looked at me. Are you going to answer eventually? I considered, then accepted the call. Put the phone to my ear, said nothing, waited. Mildred's voice came broken, crying, barely coherent. Dad, please. I know you're there. I'm here. Thank you for answering. I've been trying to reach you. 87 times, I counted. I need to talk to you about this eviction notice. There's nothing to talk about. You don't live there anymore. But where am I supposed to go? I don't have money for first and last month's rent. You had $6,200 of my money. You should have saved it. I'll pay you back, every cent. Just let me stay until I figure things out. No, single word. Final as a door slamming. Dad, please, I'm sorry. I made mistakes, but I'm your daughter. You wrote that I was a burden, that you were taking everything, that I should enjoy life in a dumpster. Silence on the line. You made your choice, Mildred. You chose money over your father. You chose to steal from me while I was dying in a hospital. Now live with those choices. Mitchell convinced me. I cut her off. Mitchell is in jail. You made your own decisions. You're an adult. She cried harder. You have 30 days. Pack your things. Find somewhere else to live. That house was never yours. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. I almost hung up, then added one more thing. You wanted your freedom from the old man who was in your way. Now you have it. I ended the call before she could respond. Set the phone down. My hands were steady. Ethel spoke quietly. That was hard. Necessary. We sat in silence. She finally asked, when will you go back? End of the month, September 1st, after she's gone. What if she doesn't leave? Warren will handle it, sheriff's deputies if necessary. I thought about the house, my home for 30 years, now tainted by betrayal, but still mine, still standing. Are you okay? Ethel asked. I considered. I will be, once I'm home again. My phone buzzed, text from Warren. Sentencing hearing confirmed August 15th, 10 a.m., courtroom 4C. I replied, I'll be there. Looked at the calendar on Ethel's wall. August winding down, September approaching. One more week, then the house. Then it was over. I'd come home to ashes. Now I'd rebuild from them. August 31st arrived with morning heat that promised another scorching Florida day. I packed my single bag at Ethel's house, preparing for the 90-mile drive back to Tampa. Back home. She watched me from the kitchen doorway. You sure you want to do this alone? Yes. Call me when you get there, when it's done. I drove west on I-4, watching Orlando fade in my mirrors. The highway stretched familiar and strange simultaneously. I'd traveled this route dozens of times over the past months, but today felt different. Final. Seminole Heights looked unchanged. Same oak trees, same bungalows, same streets where I'd lived 3 decades. I pulled into my driveway behind a moving truck that was mostly packed. Mildred's car sat beside it. She appeared on the front porch as I climbed out of my truck. Thinner than I remembered, wearing clothes that looked slept in. 2 suitcases sat by the door. Dad, I knew you'd come today. The house is mine. You knew you had to leave. I know, I'm packed. I needed to see you. We stood there, separated by 10 feet of walkway and an unbridgeable gulf of betrayal. Where are you going? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Friend's apartment. She's letting me stay on her couch until I find work. Mildred's voice carried exhaustion. Hard to get hired with a felony conviction. Consequences have weight. She looked at me, searching for something. Forgiveness, mercy, some crack in my resolve. I'm so sorry. Mitchell convinced me. So you blame Mitchell during police questioning. Now you're blaming him to me. When do you take responsibility? Please, Dad, I'm your daughter. Doesn't that mean anything? I thought about that. About the little girl I'd pushed on swings. about teaching her to ride a bicycle, about working double shifts to afford her college, about Sarah dying and leaving me with this child who'd become a stranger. I spent 30 years as a fire inspector, I said quietly. Fires don't start by accident. Someone always makes a choice, lights the match, adds accelerant. You set a fire, Mildred. You lit the match. So I deserve being homeless? Having a criminal record? I'm saying you earned consequences. This isn't revenge. This is justice. She started crying again. I felt nothing watching her tears. They'd run dry for me months ago. I made mistakes. You made choices, calculated ones, over months. I looked at the moving truck. You're leaving today? I have to be out by tomorrow. The notice said September 3rd, but Warren's office called yesterday. Said if I wasn't gone by today, sheriff's deputies would remove me. Good. Warren had applied pressure. Mildred wiped her face. When will I see you again? I don't know. Maybe never. That depends on you. What do you mean? Whether you become someone worth knowing again, someone honest, someone who takes responsibility. Until then, I paused. Goodbye, Mildred. She stood there, shock and disbelief warring on her features. You're really done with me? Your only child? You were done with me the moment you started counting days until I died. I walked past her, key in hand, toward my front door. She didn't try to stop me, just stood there crying as I unlocked the door I'd been locked out of for months by my own absence. Goodbye, Dad, she whispered. I stepped inside without responding, closed the door behind me. Through the window, I watched her gather her suitcases, load them into her car. The moving truck pulled away first. Then Mildred's car followed, disappearing down the street. I stood in my living room, listening to silence. The house felt empty, but also mine again. I walked through it slowly. Kitchen where I'd found her cruel note. Study where I'd compiled evidence. Bedroom where I'd heard my heart failing. Each room carried ghosts of the past months. In the living room, I stopped at the mantel. Sarah's photograph sat where I'd left it, her smile frozen in time, forever 47 years old. I picked up the frame. I handled it, I told her photo. It wasn't pretty, but I handled it. Sarah had always believed in justice balanced with mercy. I'd given Mildred mercy, no prison time, just probation. But justice required consequences. Balance had been restored. I made coffee in my kitchen, the percolator's familiar sound grounding me in routine. Sat at my table, the same table where that note had waited, and drank it slowly. My phone rang. Ethel. How did it go? She was waiting. We talked. She left. How do you feel? Tired, but settled. Come for dinner Sunday. Whole family will be here. Your family. I'll be there. We talked a few more minutes, then hung up. I sat finishing my coffee, looking around my kitchen. Same counters, same cabinets, same view of the backyard through the window. But different too. I was different. 3 months ago, I'd been a man dying while his daughter circled like a vulture. Now, I was a man who'd survived, fought back, reclaimed what was his. The trust paperwork sat in my study, safe and irrevocable. Ethel would inherit this house someday when I actually died, not when Mildred wished it would happen. The evidence files remained backed up in 3 places, proof of what had occurred. The court records existed permanently, documenting her guilt. I'd built a case the way I'd once investigated fires, methodically, thoroughly, leaving no wipes for doubt. Outside, late afternoon sun painted my yard golden. The oak tree I'd planted when Mildred was 5 had grown massive, its branches reaching across the property line into the neighbor's yard. That tree would outlive me. This house would outlive me. And when I was gone, it wouldn't be stolen. It would be given, deliberately, to someone who'd never counted the days until I died. I washed my coffee cup, dried it, placed it in the cabinet where it belonged. My phone buzzed. Text from Warren. Welcome home, I replied. Thank you for everything. Another text arrived. Dinner soon? On me. Next week, I'll call. I stood at my kitchen sink, looking out at the yard, the oak tree, the life I'd almost lost to betrayal. The house settled around me with familiar creaks and sighs. The fire had burned itself out. Only I remained, standing in what could have been ashes but was instead solid ground, scarred but intact, wounded but surviving. I'd spent 30 years preventing fires from destroying what people built. Then I'd spent 3 months watching one try to consume me. But I'd been the better fire inspector in the end. I'd found the ignition point, documented the accelerants, traced the pattern back to its source. And I'd done what fire inspectors do. I'd made sure everyone understood exactly how the fire started, so the next one couldn't. Evening arrived, bringing cooler air through my windows. I turned on lights against the gathering darkness, made myself dinner, simple, just enough. Ate at my table in my kitchen in my house. Tomorrow I'd unpack, replace the locks, change the alarm codes, make this space mine again in every detail. Tonight, I just sat in the silence, feeling the weight of months settle into memory, feeling exhaustion mixing with something that wasn't quite peace but was close enough. I'd come home, and home was still here, waiting. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.